Hello, everyone. Welcome for another series with Hostify. And today we have a very special guest, no less than Marriott Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy, a special design that they did. And with us today is going to be Gregor. Welcome, Gregor.
Welcome, Joan. Thank you a lot to inviting us to this webinar, and thanks to everyone who was able to join this event.
Amazing. Thank you, Gregor, for attending. So as you can see today, we're going to be very focused on the luxury vacational rental market. As you may know, it might be quite straightforward what it is about, but there is a lot of interesting topics, a lot of data that we're going to be sharing today. So as I mentioned, Gregor is with us. He's the director of connectivity, and he's been helping us a lot with the connection between Marriott and Hostify. We have already a good number of clients using it. So if you are not with Marriott already, don't hesitate to contact me or contact Gregor at the end of the call, and we'll be gladly helping you to put all the properties from Hostify towards Marriott. And obviously, I'm Joan, CRO for Hostify. You already know me from some webinars. And today agenda, we're going to be speaking a little bit what makes a vacational rental luxury. It might be quite straightforward, but we'll give you some tips how to identify it and how can you know if your property can be there or what does it need to be there. The rise of the luxury rentals, we'll be sharing some interesting data. A strategic investment, why should be you investing in this kind of properties, and we will end with Gregor explaining us about the successful luxury vacational rental marketing strategy and some Q&A. Okay, so you will have a private chat that you will be able to answer all of that. Okay, so let's just start with a very interesting data. I'm just gonna throw one question that is gonna be in there for you to answer. So let me send it to you. And it's going to be basically how many properties are you managing right now? Okay. So we can see already some answers. Okay. Quite a mix of different options. Some mid-sized property managers, some small, and a bit large. All right, so we can see here are really interesting how this market has been growing for the last decade and what are the expectations to be growing even more, and what is going to be the number of reservations of the revenue that is going to be generating. So based on that, Gregor, what do you think has been determinating for the factor of this increase? As we can see, is a huge increase, 30% on the number of properties that they are going into this market.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, my opinion is the fact that first of all, from a demographic standpoint, people, what we are calling boomer, are more confident with the technology and also with the regulation of the market. So when the market started back in the time, it was like more related, like an experience about getting in a property in a house. Sorry, but now on, it's more people look at the vacation rental market like as another option, and because of that, also people that they used to travel for holidays in hotels, they are starting to look at this option as a potential one. So also, of course, the technological part is also a big factor, because if you think that also people is more are comfortable in using internet to book the holidays, that back in the time it wasn't like that. So I think it's because of for a demographic standpoint, and then also for a technological one.
Amazing. That was going to be one of the questions. Like, obviously, if the demographic or the technology has been playing a big part of it, you already answered. And before we move into the next one, I'm just going to have another quick question for all our attendees on where are your properties located. So you will have them there, some key markets that later we'll be sharing you where are most of these luxury market more growth, or where are the most of them in the world, no? So we can see some people already answering. Greece, nice villas there. Who doesn't want to go to Mykonos? We can see Spain as well, huge market. US, other countries. Perfect. So a great variety of different locations. Okay. So let's move on into the next one. What makes a vacation or rental luxury? So I'm gonna give you three different options, and actually I'm gonna ask it as well here to all of you. One of my last questions, which is basically, what do you think? Which of the following options do you think is gonna be the most important: exclusivity, personalization, or experience oriented when we are talking about rental vacation and luxury? And actually, since we have an expert here, I'm going to ask you the same, Gregor. What do you think is the key point in order for a vacation or rental luxury to make it possible? It's exclusivity, personalization, or experience oriented.
So, first of all, I would say the most important thing is the property itself. It seems obvious the answer, but the property, it's really important that uh, that it looks and it is luxury, right? So, in terms of exclusivity, I don't see so much this part, but it's more on personalization. Basically, you can have a really, really nice property, but then if it's not furnished at the level that someone is expecting, or that someone that is spending that money is expecting, basically you're providing a really bad experience. And so the experience, then it's also answering to the third point, right? So it's basically a mixing of personalization and experience, providing a nice luxury property. And and yeah, if you look about exclusivity, it's important to being able to provide um, some nice exclusive features in the house, but it's not everything, because if you think also like uh, the multi-property that you're able to sell is not exclusive, but it provides this feeling. So I think it's a combination of three, basically.
Amazing. We can see from most of the ones that they've been answering, they were thinking of more experience. And I think I agree a little bit with Gregor. Obviously, personalization, it makes a big difference. Um, but yeah, as we mentioned at the end, even it makes a bit straightforward, but the property itself is going to be the one making the difference, no? And here some tips or how to understand a little bit about each point that we spoke about it. So how is exclusivity, no? So how do you have to do an strategic distribution? How you have to provide, unique experiences and the high quality of experience and high expectations, no? As you may know, only a luxury booking is not just to have the property well accommodated with nice furniture, with nice features, but obviously we have to provide a high quality, because the expectations of this type of client that is going to attend the property is going to be completely different from any kind of guest that is coming for any kind of property management, property company, or any property in any apartment, that they are only coming for a few days of holidays. They are looking for something else, no? And it's like when you go for a 5-star hotel, it's not just about the room, but also the experience that you are getting out of it, no? And this part would be obviously the exclusivity. And here we can see houses that they are in more remote places or more unique versus any other kind of house or villa that we may have in other places, no? Personalization, big point that Gregor has mentioned, no? Here, of course, these small details is gonna make a completely different experience for the guest, no? If we already know if he likes wine or chocolate or small things that we will present as a high standards that will provide to the client, this will make the guest really understood, and it will make such a great experience for them. We need to tailor it as well experience. And as we mentioned, we need to understand what the client's needs are, or what are the expectations, or what is the plans, or what they have booked this rental luxury and not they didn't go to any kind of other property, and then anticipating experience. So this will come with more bookings that you will be having, and more understanding of the clients, and creating your own brand, because at the end, rental luxury as well, it will be all related with the brand of the property management providing the service, and the client already knowing what are they going to get for booking with any this kind of property management companies, And finally, the one that you bought the most, which is the experience oriented. Obviously, everything that we've been talking, exclusivity, personalization, at the end, I think is going to be coming handy, or it's going to be coming all together, and it will end up with this, experience oriented. Basically, we already understood the client needs, so we're going to create a really memorable moment. We can even organize some kind of trip. We can help them, hiring some kind of services. So this will create the ultimate experience for the client. Tell a story as well. Obviously, also that they are in the property is going to speak a lot about what kind of brand are you, which kind of services do you offer, and then finally fostering as loyalty. So this is a bit again what we're talking, the brand, the brand of the company, and trying to create that loyalty, same as the Marriott does, with all these points that you can earn, all the services that they give you, and all the levels that they give you to create more loyal clients. Okay. So let's move on to the next topic, which is going to be some factors, some data. This is the things that I like the most from every webinar. So factors that affect the luxury bookings, the luxury rentals. So as we already talked, we have an expectation of a big growth. We can see the numbers of the revenue. How are they growing year per year? What are the expectations? How the platforms like Marriott is making easier for this kind of property to be segmented and to be available for everyone online. How the pandemic as well, after the COVID, is seeking for more, big spacious apartments with terrace, with, different elements and features and things that they're going to make more comfortable. Because as we know, some clients or some guests that they were traveling around, maybe they were staying for 1 week in one apartment, and they end up having to be there for 1 year in a different country in an apartment that they couldn't move from there. So this has kind of created this kind of now having in mind to create to get like big and spacious places in order to make sure in case that they have to be there, and to stay longer and more comfortable. And what are the demands, and how is increasing and prioritizing the comfort and exclusivity? And as we mentioned again, they are not just looking for an apartment with a kitchen. They are looking for private pools, gyms, services, some extra services that a hotel used to provide. And they were unique. Right now, there are whole buildings or different villas that they already have incorporated all these kind of exclusive services that it was used to make a different hotel into the property management. So let's move on to the investment. So it goes all to related. As we already spoke about the pandemic, this has increased as well the trend of investing in these kind of properties, and how is this like an overall reducing the risk on the diversification that is going to be. It's a global trend as well that we are seeing more people investing on this premium and travel exclusive accommodation. The return is going to be much higher than any kind of property management. The ADR is going to be higher. With less reservations, you're going to have more profit or more net revenue out of from another reservations. We can see as well from these long stays that this vacation or rental are offering, the minimum length of stay of these on average of these luxury vacation or rentals is higher than the usual short-term rental with any apartment in big cities, in urban cities, versus this market where the client will stay longer, will spend more time, and also it will be give you the availability as well to upselling for any kind of services that you will be offering, because this client is always more on a position to spend more money. Okay. Why is an strategic as well investment? During downturns, again, the rentals show exceptional resilience during economic distress. always these guests or this kind of clients as well, with luxury habits to travel around. The economy is not going to be that affected when we have these crashes on the global economy, versus any kind of guest that usually travels for a weekend to Milan or to Madrid, versus this exclusive market that we are talking about. Protection against volatility. Luxury rentals, they are hedged against real estate and travel market volatility, and they provide an stability and consistent returns during economic uncertainty, as we already spoke about it. No? And then what we keep talking about, the exclusive market access and how this is demographic based, and how the shielding of the losses, it will be by the broader population during downturns. Okay. And finally, some more data about the markets in the world. As we can see, Europe really huge when we are talking about rental luxury. We can see coming after Asia, and surprisingly, we can see North America not being that much into the market. Also, obviously, it's a bigger market, so it's harder to get that many on there. But Europe, we can see cities like countries like Croatia, Italy, or Spain really focus on this luxury, and especially usually they turn to be around demographic areas, key demographic areas like the coast or mountains. So they're usually outside of the cities. No, Latin America coming up there, but still quite far away from what we're expecting. No. And we can see a 30% increase on the luxury short-term rentals in 21 for 22. Okay. So huge numbers, what we can experience here. Finally, what we're talking about as well, about the occupancy, as we mentioned, there is an average booking value stands at 24,000, which a daily rate of between 1,000 to 3,000. So that ADR, it's huge. And what I was talking about, typically they enjoy around 10 nights. So what we said, the minimum length of stay, it's higher, much higher from the short-term rental, the usual short-term rental, which it might be around 3 to 4 days on average. And as we mentioned, this will be large groups or a couple of families that will be reunited in a spacious villa or house. And we can see here how many listings does already have homes and villas with more than 130,000 all around the world. The nightly rate, to go more in detail, as we can see here, usually it can go from 1,537. And as we can see, the market average, what I was talking, it's a little bit more than 200. That's a huge difference. And we can see some villas that they can be sold for 10,000 a night. So again, the return of investment that we're saying, it's much higher than any other property that you might acquire, any other apartment, small house, or guest house that you might have, no? And how the occupancy rates, they are up from 95%. So obviously, the longer the stay, the easier it will be to cut off all the minimum on the occupancy, no? So that being said, I'm gonna ask one last question to Gregor. Based on your experience, what are the most notable demands on travel currency? Have you noticed any significant change in the recent years?
So definitely yes. Also because if I'm linking at the last slide that you provided, it's first of all, it's really important to note that these really big houses has a really high ADR, right? So also because we have to keep in mind that usually are groups. So what is happening now on, people is more comfortable in booking high-end properties and to group all their friends or their family in one long holiday. No, let's say we know that the U.S. demographic guests, they're loving to travel in Croatia, in Italy, in Spain, Southern America, and basically spend their holiday all together in one of those houses. No. And also another really important thing is about the personalization. So it's these people that are arriving in that kind of properties, and they're willing to spend so much money in that. They're expecting also to have services. It's like, think about yourself. You're spending, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000 euro for a week on holiday. You are being in 16 people. first of all, it's not easy to book a restaurant for so many people. Also, to move all those people is also require an extra effort because you need like a transfer, you need cars, and so on. And because of that, it's obvious that the following step is book a chef that is coming into your home, that is providing you the experience of eating what is typical from characteristic from that area, and that way you have an exclusive experience, and also it's more comfortable, as you can imagine, right? So all these kind of personalization actually are not really, it's more than personalization, it's an obvious following step to allow the guest to don't feel the pain, right? Because if you are in a country for in a foreign country, you don't have all the contact as you are at your home, right? And because of that, they need someone to trust to help to make this time unforgettable. And there is where is jumping in the home management company or the property manager. You know, so, but to move on the presentation is like before I jump in the data and all interesting things that I'm going to share later. I would like to first of all introduce Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy, right? That basically Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy is a platform backed by Marriott International, where basically only professional home management companies are able to distribute in the Marriott Bonvoy travel loyalty program. So nowadays we have more, or sorry, we distribute more than 140,000 premium and luxury homes globally. We are in about 400 destinations all over the world. And just last month, we reached the 200 million Marriott's Bonvoy members, right? It's like this is what we are, and also it's going to be super interesting to understand about the Marriott Bonvoy loyalty program, where, as I mentioned, there is like 200 million members of people that are expecting to travel with us. Until the recent years, there was only hotels, but now we become the largest travel company because we are offering hotels, we are offering experiences, travel content, and of course, home short-term rental business. And these kind of guests, actually now, if we are going a little bit deep in the demographic, basically they are high earners. So it means that they have the capacity to spend money, right? So having the capacity, it doesn't mean that they are willing to spend, but we have to help them to spend that money, no? Through the experience, through the cross-selling, through the services that allow them to being comfortable in what they're doing. Then they are age 30, between 35 and 50. It means that these kind of people that we are happy to host because probably they are not like the party monster that are coming to your properties to destroy them. No, probably they already have passed this part, this chapter of their life, and they just want to enjoy the experience in the foreign and or their holiday. There are families and groups. Again, it means that usually families and groups are a big numbers of people. So we have to be ready to host between 10, 12, 15, 20 people in our property. And if we are going to host them, we also have to help them to manage all the duties. And the last but not least is that they're experienced travelers. So it's not the fact that we are all going to offer them, they're feeling the fact that, oh, wait, they want to steal us money. No. They know what they can expect from professional of the business, right? And to be more focused on the luxury part, here I have a slides where basically is explaining a bit about our luxury Bonvoy member base. So first of all, we are not an exclusive luxury platform because our hotel base basically is premium and luxury. it means that we do have a part of our member base that is looking for premium properties, but another part is looking for high-end experiences. And usually, in our case, there is like a guest with an ADR that more than $450 a day as a DR. They are Marriott guests that they have stayed in a luxury hotel in the past 3 years. And in terms of numbers, we at the moment we have 4.5 million guests who match our luxury audience profile, and 48% of those people stayed in homes and villas by Marriott Bonvoy. So it means that 48% of our guests of homes and villas by Marriott Bonvoy are looking for exceptional experiences and stays. And again, if you look at the demographic, it's quite similar to what I showed before. So age 25 to 54, in some cases single, high earner. And it's really important to see platinum or above Marriott Bonvoy members. I dig in later in the next slides because I think it's important to give an overview about it, context about what it means platinum and or above Marriott Bonvoy members. In case of our member base, they are business travelers. They are really loyal to our brand. So these two things are related because usually our Bonvoy members, they're used to travel because of work. So they are business travelers and they are book properties, hotels on our platform. That's allow them to earn points. And those points, then they are able to spend those points for holidays. So as you can see, it's a circular economy that's allow our member to don't go out, and they prefer to book on our platform because of the benefit they do have, right? And then, of course, the interest they do have is like bar and lounge enthusiasts and restaurant loyalty. So all these things related, chef, tips in terms of which is the best restaurants, high-level restaurants, right? So they're super interested. So that's something that we have to keep in mind if also we are thinking about the guest experience that we want to provide, the customization of the experience that we want to provide. So basically, we have to put ourselves in their feet and understand what they are looking for. So in that case, in this case, you have a slide that basically is showing you, as in telling you, what our guests are looking for. So it's quite impressive, right? Because usually it's super hard to understand. How you understand it? Basically, you have to make questions. And in some cases, especially when we do have like already implemented our operations in terms of a home management company, put together their operation, they send out email templates. That's perfect because now 9 out 10 emails are almost the same, but then one remaining emails, it should be, we should be able to customize based on the answer, on the request that the guest is providing us. That's what it's allowed to provide an exceptional stay and an improved experience to your guest. As I mentioned in the previous slide, basically here I'm just digging a little bit more in our membership tiers and requirements. So just to give you an idea of what our guests are looking for. No? So here you can see there is the Marriott Bonvoy member, the normal status, silver, gold, and platinum and above. Platinum and above, it means a member of our guest base basically is spending between 50 and 74 nights in a year in one of our hotels. Marriott Bonvoy Titanium 75 plus nights in a year, and an ambassador elite, he stayed 100 more nights. And he's used to spend more than 23,000 dollar in a year. So what that's mean that these kind of guests that are the ones that we are focused on when we are talking about luxury, they know what they're looking for. They know what they can get back from a stay. So it means that when we are going to market these kind of guests, we have to keep in mind what we are going to provide them, right? We can't just say, oh, this is a luxury house. We just put like, because it's a nice neighborhood, it is in a great area of the city, but then we fill it with like all IKEA stuff. I don't have anything against IKEA, and it's not an advertisement for them, but and then don't provide the minimum of for the minimum furniture or the minimum things that are needed in the kitchen. We have to think that when this guest is entering in that property, they need to find everything and above. It means they will have to have everything, but then they need also to have the chance to book a chef through us. This is what it makes the next level experience. And this is the kind of people that we have to think about that we are targeting when we are doing luxury. So now that I provide you some context about who we are and some advertising things, it's basically when I'm going through like some successful luxury vacation rental marketing strategy. So basically, here we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points that basically we have to think about when we're going through setting up a luxury vacation rental marketing strategy, right? So formulate your winning channel blend. Aim for an exclusivity by carefully selecting where your property is marketed. Avoid mass distribution across all online travel agency (OTAs) sites. Instead, target the top 1%. So it means that basically we have to understand the market where we want to market our property, because it brings back about the exclusivity of the property. So if you want to make these exclusive, you really need to understand on which platform you have to distribute the property. For instance, Homes and Villas by Marriott Bonvoy. But why? Because if it is listed on us, it has this exclusivity that not everyone is able to do, because we don't distribute everyone. We just partner with some kind of professional, and because we do have these kind of guests that are willing to spend that money. So then engage with unique guest requests. That what I mentioned before. Basically, you have to provide a property that has everything and above, but then being able to personalize the guest requested. So it's normal that there should be a person. I'm not saying a concierge, because it's not concierge, but someone that is able to solve the problem. Because they're arriving there, they want a chef, they want to call someone, I want a chef. Of course, I'm not expecting this the night before, because we know it's not possible. But to don't encounter us in this situation, we have to suggest to the guest that you have a chef that is available to come to the property and cook for them. But of course, you need to sometimes in order to provide to organize it. No, then the other thing is like target your chosen audience, tailor marketing efforts for specific demographics. Is what I just mentioned before, right? So you know the kind of the customer that you are looking for, and in our case, it's pretty easy because you do have like the members tiers that allow you to understand it, and then this is your customer, this is what you're looking for, and because of that, I'm preparing myself to provide the best experience possible and tailor the experience for them. Craft tailored experience is basically 70% of the guest experience come from creating customized experience provided by learning who your guest is prior to their stay. I just mentioned it, right? Being able to encounter their needs. So being proactive, sending them an email, understanding what they're looking for. If they're kids, probably they need a babysitter because they want to spend, like, I don't know, just a day without the kids. They're perfect. So you can find them a babysitter or an activity organized by yourself to offer. This is something that you have to be proactive. It doesn't mean that they want to book it, but just have these feelings that make them trusting your company for also other choice. So this is like in terms of developing an irresistible narrative and forge emotional connection with guests. This is going in the same direction. Actually, you need to. Sorry, I do have some unstable connection. Can you hear me well?
Yeah,
Okay,
all
cool.
good,
Sorry,
Gregor.
guys.
Hmm.
Okay, sorry. I just received a message, so I was like, worried about it. Now it was frozen.
No, 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 no. It's all fine.
Okay. Cool, cool. So, what I was saying was like about developing a irresistible narrative, a forge emotional connection with guests. This is going from the same direction. Basically, it's like we have to be to drive the narrative of our listing. So it means that if you provide some kind of um, uh, experience through your listing, then what you're providing back should be at the same level. You can't go down. So in some cases, it's better to don't overpromise because then the downside is like a bad review or probably the guest is not happy about you. No, so in this case, it's really important how you list your property. So the pictures are fundamental. How you create, how you explain, it's super important. Also because then once they book, it's also setting the expectation for the next step. So and that means then if you list the property in that way, then the communication, the guest experience should be at the same level. So basically, those are our six tips to be successful on a luxury vacation rental. Of course, I'm sure there are a lot of other things that you can jump in and suggest, but I think it's a good start at least. And because of that, actually, what I'm leading here is like our contacts. So first thing first, I asked at the beginning of the webinar who was already partnered with us. I saw that seven person click on the pool that they were in. So this is the right moment. They can scan the QR code, or they can contact myself, or they can basically type the link that you are finding over there. And then one of my colleagues basically is going to reach you out and explain more in the details how you can partner with us. And if you have further questions, answer your questions and so on. So on my end at this point, I finish it. I don't know if you have any question, any doubt for me or Joan about this presentation. Feel free to jump in. I
We
passing over
actually,
to you, Joan.
yeah, we actually have already a few. Before we start with them, and actually I had a question because you mentioned, because we saw one of the slides that it was like a big percentage of the market growing in Europe. Lots of properties of luxury rentals. Biggest market might be in Europe, and you mentioned, like American travelers going to Europe or Italy or Spain, Croatia, looking for these luxury rentals. Might that be one of the factors? Like in America, it didn't grow that much, the luxury rental properties, and it's because most of the market is coming more for Europe, or American being such a large population and travel industry. Most of them, when they are coming into this luxury vacational rental, they are more looking for huge big locations in Spain, Italy, Croatia, as you mentioned. So that's why he's not investing that much in the luxury rental.
So I would say because the market in US is not so mature as in Europe. In Europe, we use since longer to offer these kind of properties, and also because if you think like when in America, when some person from US are passing the ocean to come in Europe, and they are spending their holy of the life. No, so because of that, they're coming in Europe and they're spending 15 days and they want to have everything at the top. In that way, probably is the reason why it's easier in to sell it in Europe. Also because Americans are more willing to spend their money. So it's like
Uh-huh.
if they're not really uh, uh, thinking about, oh, I can find something else, or I need to save
Uh-huh.
money and so on. So I think
Yeah.
probably just because to these two factors. No, so the first one is about we are more mature, we have a better offer. Of course, also there is a lot of people who want to travel in the South Europe because
Uh-huh.
Italy, Greece, Spain, and it's always on top of the search. And then also because there is this kind of offers that allow those people to
Uh-huh.
spend their holidays in these kind of properties.
Amazing. We have more questions. I can actually, they're going to be mostly for you. What factors should a property owner consider when setting nightly rates for luxury properties?
Okay, that's a great question. Actually, I would say the best thing is shopping around, right? There are of course tools that allows you uh, to that are providing to you the best rate. But in that case, especially for a luxury, it's not so easy because it's luxury. It doesn't follow the same rules as premium or more normal properties. So the best thing for myself, from this is personal for myself, basically, is going and check properties similar to your property, and not only in your city, but I would say if you have a property like yours, you have to, and you do have in Tuscany, probably you have to check in Tuscany, you have to check in Spain, you have to check in France, and basically the same level, and try to understand what they're offering in the other and the rates. Because if you limited yourself, then you are missing something. Also, because think about that, these people, the people that has money, they don't really care about if they have to travel to Italy or to Greece or to Spain. Basically, they're looking at the property. If they like the property and what they're getting, they're going that in that property in Spain, Greece, or Italy, or whatever. So I think this is the best tip that I can provide you. I don't know what Joan think about.
Yeah, I think you're a bit right. No, here location it's not a factor as you're mentioning. It doesn't matter if you are maybe as we mentioned before, no Ibiza or Mykonos or like at the end there are key locations more or less really similar one to each other. So at the end where you're selling is the property, the luxury, the features, the amenities, all the different things that you're using to sell. So it's not gonna be related as you mentioned, like if it's in Madrid or London. So because economy is a big difference, so it will be a different pricing. At the end, we are more looking into properties that they are similar independently where they located at, because at the end the price is going to be more or less the same. Because at the end we are more based on the property rather than on the location. So as you mentioned, is a good tip not to check properties with a similar size, similar furniture, similar luxury brands, different features, amenities, upsellings, services that you will be offering. No.
No.
More questions. Any recommendations for attracting repeat guests and fostering long-term loyalty in the luxury vacation or rental market?
Oh,
Quite
definitely.
easy,
This
no?
is like yeah, that's what we are doing all the time. So basically, we build we build our member base where with our loyalty program in order for them to come back to us. So that's what we're doing every day. In terms of what I'm suggesting you, like you put myself in a bit weird situation because we don't want we want our guests repeating with us. So but definitely like don't losing the relationship with them is a plus because the word mouth is the best advertisement that you can have. No, so you know that once you get these guests in your property, then he can refer he your property to someone else, and yeah, this is the best that you can do.
Yeah. At the end, it's a bit of loyalty, and it would be related as well of the points that we mentioned, no personalization, that will make a
Yeah.
client come back because at the end you made a unique
Yeah, that's
experience
what
for
we have
them.
done. It's what we have done us, no? So we have these. Basically, we do have an extra currency. Loyalty pro, our Bonvoy points are an extra
Mhm.
currency. So if you think that if I'm not wrong, if I'm recall correctly, 40% of our reservation come from cash and points payments. It means that
Mhm.
a guest is paying part of the total in by credit card and the other part by points. So that's something that in other platform they can do, and that's also something it's our plus. So of course our home management company are receiving money, so don't worry, it's cash. but for a guest, it's a plus.
Yeah. Another question, do you recommend the use of dynamic pricing of this type of property? Here, what we spoke a little bit, Gregor and ourselves, it might be not the best solution. You can use it, of course, and dynamic pricing is always a great feature, and I always recommend it. I think it's a must. But as we mentioned, for this specific market, since they are more unique, they are in, different remote places, like there is not much to compare between what you are offering versus the usual long term short term rental. It might be not the best approach, or you can do a different strategy. Always all these tools, they offer different features that you can use for unique apartments. Maybe you can select, as we mentioned, different properties that they are similar and not based on geography, but based more on properties that they are same as yours, no?
Yeah, definitely. It's depending also which kind of tools these dynamic pricing platform are able to provide, right? Because if you're able to,
Mhm.
for instance, to select the property based on your needs, so you just handpick the property that you want to get compared, that probably is something good to have. And I would say, yeah, it helps you to have an easier job, right? But again, it's always good to have a second opinion. So my answer is like I wouldn't say no 100%, but you should think about if it makes sense or not.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everyone. We have no more questions. In any case, you have here our details in this slide, either mine or Gregor. As we mentioned, if you're not in Marriott already and you're using Hostify, do not hesitate to either contact me or contact Gregor to start pushing all that properties towards. And yeah, thank you, everyone, for assisting. Thank you especially for Gregor to being with us today and explain all the interesting new things that you're showing at home and villas. How do you take care of all your guests and the loyalty programs that you have, and how much is your company growing now and offering now not just accommodation, but as you mentioned, services and many different experiences through all the world, no?
Yeah, and thank you to you for inviting us. It was an honor, and also I'm super happy about this new connection that we launched recently. Not so recently because now it passed some months, so we were able to more than test this integration. We are already having great results, so we are looking forward to everyone who is interested to partner with us, and of course to have a great successful partnership with you, Hostify and team. So thank you so much again for inviting us.
Great. Thank you, everyone.